let's look at how to do this. So go into one of your courses. You might do this, follow along with me. If you have two monitors, you can have the video on one and then work in PolyLearn on the other monitor. First thing you want to do is go in your course and turn editing on. So that puts you more in the instructor role with the abilities to add content. When you're in the instructor role in PolyLearn, by turning editing on, you'll see all these different editing icons. So I'm going to make a new one here. And what you do is you select add and an activity or resource. And then you'll see choices under assignments. Remember I said that the rubric or the marking guide has to be attached to an assignment or a workshop. Workshops are down here. We're not going to cover that today, but that is an exciting tool as well. So in the assignments, you have 4 choices in the types of assignments you might use. Advanced uploading of files, and that means you can upload more than one file. So if a student has an assignment that requires several files to complete, let's say they have a report as well as some images, you would want to choose that one. Online text, this one allows them to type text in a box that's provided for them, a text box in Moodle. It's more for a short, very short, maybe paragraph, 2-paragraph answer about something. Upload a single file allows the student on the assignment to just upload one file. We don't suggest that you use that one very often because you never know when you might have something more than one file on an assignment and you didn't think about it, and you can't change that later. You have to go redo the whole assignment, so that's a pain. So it's just more prudent to choose advanced uploading of files all the time, because it doesn't matter if there's only one file in there, but it allows you that freedom not to have to redo it if you somehow decided you needed more than one file sent from the student. And then an offline activity, this one is used quite a lot because it just allows you to give instructions to the student about what to do for the activity, and it makes a gradebook column for that activity for you to grade, and also provides the rubric or the marking guide, but they turn in the particular assignment in class or some other way, maybe emailing it to you or whatever, instead of putting it up in PolyLearn. So that is one you can use as well and still use the rubric. So I'm going to pick offline activity here, and I'm going to pick the add button. So now we're going to add the assignment. We need to supply an assignment name. So I'm going to call this concert report number 3. And then in the description area here, this is where you would put the instructions to your students. Now this might include as well those instructions I told you about where you tell them how to view the rubric. I'm going to cheat here right now and just put see the syllabus, pretending that I wrote out all the instructions in the syllabus. But the best thing to do would be to write them all here. I'm just not going to take the time for that right now. Then you also choose to display the description on the course page if you want them to be able to see the instructions right there. Of course, you could do all kinds of things up here, like change the font to match your course and size, etc. I think I'll just make that bold. They see that the instructions are there. Then you go on down here to the available from and the due date. So what date are you going to make it available to the students? And we'll just leave it today's the 29th of October, so we'll just leave it for that. Let's have made it 9 a.m. and make sure enable is turned on. And then when is this assignment due? So I'm going to pick the 2nd of December. Give them a little time to get this done. And I'm going to pick almost midnight. The closest I could get to midnight is 11:55 p.m. Of course, that would be in the day, in the morning, so I did that wrong. I want 23:55. And this is in military time, obviously. So that will be at 11:55, so close to midnight. I found that if you put it at 12 a.m., then it's confusing because that's really the midnight of the day before. So you kind of have to play with it there. Make sure enable is also check marked here. In the grade area, we want to choose how many points this is going to be worth. So you can choose up to 250 points here. I don't want this assignment to be worth that much. You can pick no grade whatsoever or credit no credit. I'm going to make this assignment worth 50 points. So choose 50. In the grading method, I will choose rubric. I was going to show you the rubric first, and then I'll show you the marking guide later. So we're picking grading method is rubric. You will not see this pull-down menu in other areas except for in the assignment and the workshop tools. If I had some grade category set up in my gradebook, which I do not, I could choose the type of grade category it would go into right there. It's telling me an offline activity. I don't need to set up groups. I'm not going to restrict access because I sort of controlled that with the available from dates and the due date. And instead of save and return to course, I'm going to pick save and display because that will take me onward to set up my rubric. Then we come to this advanced grading page, and if I change my mind at this point, I could still switch over to making it a marking guide, but I'm going to keep it at rubric. And then I want to pick define a new grading form from scratch. Now, if you've created some in the past, you can actually choose from your own templates of the past and use those. But I'm just going to start from scratch here. And now I have some things to fill out to make my rubric. So I'm going to put a name here, and I'm going to call it the Concert Report number 3 rubric. And this is one of the few places where a description is not required. You can see because it's not in red and doesn't have the asterisk. But if I wanted to, I could describe what this rubric is about. So underneath the description box here, we have the area where you put in the criterion one by one and choose the levels. Now, I prefer my levels to go from the most amount of points descending, and by default Moodle puts it ascending, so you can see 0 points and 1 point, 2 points. So if I want to change this, I can go down to sort order for levels and change it from ascending by number of points to descending by number of points. Now nothing will happen right then to see it, so I have to pick save as draft. Go out for a moment. So now I've saved as a draft, and I can go in now and edit the current form, and it will be by descending points. And I can change these point values as well. If I somehow need to get back into this area for editing, the easiest way to do it is to click the assignment back on the main page. So you click that assignment, and then you will see a section on the left in settings that says advanced grading. And you open up that toggle and pick define rubric, and you're back in this area again. So, perhaps you need to save the draft to go to a committee meeting or something like that, and you haven't finished it. You can just save the draft with that button at the bottom here, and then get back in by clicking on the assignment link on the main home page, and then pick advanced grading and define rubric. Okay, so here we want to put in a criterion, clear concert information, the date of the concert, etc. That's one of the criterion. And then I want to explain what that means. So in this case, maybe it means providing all 4 of those items requested here: date of concert, location, name of orchestra. This one would be that the student provides maybe 3 of the requested items. And here we'll change that to 2 of the requested items. And I'm going to add another level. I actually want 4 levels. And so it provides at least 1 of the requested items. Okay. let's say at least 1 or none. Now I want to change these points, so I just click down here and I can make that 4 points if they do everything they're supposed to, 3, 2, and 1 point. Now I can just go and add some more criterion by clicking the Add Criterion button and type in the next one. In this case, I want something to do with the description of the pieces performed, so perhaps they gave me an impressive description, and it goes on and tells them what that is. The student gives me a good description. Type in an adequate description is given, or perhaps the student really didn't give me a description at all. And then you would just continue in a like manner here, adding all the criterion you want, however many levels. You can keep going here if you want more levels. You can have more levels for one than another as well, so I might want more levels for this one but not in that one, and you can do that. Then you go down here, you pick the rubric options. We already messed with the descending by number of points, and these are your other options. Allow users to preview the rubric used in the module. Otherwise, the rubrics only become available after grading. So you want that one turned on, like we talked about. You really want your students to be able to see the rubric beforehand, before they attempt the assignment. Display the rubric description during evaluation. Display the rubric description to those being graded. Display points for each level during evaluation. Display points for each level to those being graded. Allow the grader to add text remarks for each criteria. That will give you the feedback boxes we talked about. And show the remarks to those being graded. So I'm pretty much done with this rubric. It's only 2 criterion. Obviously you would make a larger one, but just for a point of showing you, that's where I'm going to stop. So save the rubric and make it ready. That makes it ready to the students. So when you go to grade, it will look something like this. And as you roll your mouse over the various levels, it turns green and you pick the one you want for the student. Because I asked for the feedback boxes, and I can make final overall feedback here for the whole report if I want to. And if I pick send notifications, it will email a student that I have graded it. Then I would click Save Changes. Another thing is, how do you grade the rubric? Well, when you have editing turned on, like we do here, it will say turn editing off because it toggles. And you just click on the assignment link as we did before. You just click on View Assignment Grades and Feedback on the top right. And then you'll see your students. I only have 1 student listed here because this is a bogus class. And so you pick the student and click on the link for grade next to their name. Then all you would need to do is click on the levels that they achieved and write any feedback in the boxes. And provide any kind of overall feedback here and send notifications to the student that you've graded it and hit Save Changes. Let's take a look at using the marking guide. It's very similar to the rubric. Here I have a marking guide example set up, and let's just go and look at that for a moment. You can see the difference here is that you have your criterion kind of loosely stated. You don't have levels. You have an area here for feedback, and you have an area here for score. So many out of 5, or however you determine that score amount will be in your evaluation. You have the frequently used comments, which if you just click in the box and then hit one of your frequently used comments, it goes in there. You can type in these boxes. etc. And then again at the bottom you can provide overall feedback. If you want, you can add a file, so if you wanted to track changes and make comments on a Word document or something like that, you could just put the file in here and upload it back to the student and hit Save Changes. Again, there's a send notifications to tell the student that you have graded their work and they can look at it now. So let's go back and set up a marking guide. It's very similar to the way you set up a rubric. So here we add an activity, we pick an offline activity. Again, you can pick any of the 4 activities. We give it a name. We give it a description. This is where you should probably provide some instructions, and again tell the student how to get to view it beforehand, as we did with the rubric. Pick an available from date, a due date, how many points that you want it to be worth, and this is the important part, the grading method. Instead of simple direct grading, which is no rubric or no marking guide, you pick marking guide. You can categorize it into a grade category if you have your grades categorized. We'll not put it in a group, and that's about all we need to do. Click Save and Display, and then define a new grading form from scratch. And you name this marking guide, so I'm going to call Concert Report number 3 Marking Guide. You don't need to provide a description here as you did before. As you can see, the description here is not in red with an asterisk, which means it's not a required field. Then here, you click to give a criterion name. So let's say I'm concerned about spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And you can have a description for the students if you want to. You don't have to. You can have a description for your markers. Those are the people that are grading, or as a little clue to yourself, to remind yourself what you're looking for, and a maximum mark. So in this case, that's going to be worth 5 points. You just keep adding criterion in the same manner. Keep adding criterion, and then start writing your frequently used comments by clicking here. Add another frequently used comment, so it gives you another box, etc. You show the guide definition to students if you click here, or you can show the marks per criterion to students clicking here. You can save as a draft and come back into it by going back in here into the advanced grading like we did for the rubric, and define the marking guide. That's simply done by clicking on the link for the assignment, and then it will show this over here. Or you can save the marking guide and make it ready. And that would be the end of that. Same thing when you want to grade it with the marking guide. You click on the assignment name, and it shows no attempts have been made on this assignment, but you could still look at it there. This was the old one that I did, so it looks a little bit different than the fake one I was setting up there for you. And that's it. There are definitely times that you would use the marking guide, and there's definitely times you would use the rubric, and I think that you can figure out which one works best for you. Rubric is especially helpful for things that might be more subjective on a final project or a final paper, things like that. The marking guide can be used, on a weekly basis if you wish, for just being more thorough in your grading feedback.